is my pleasure this evening to invite my dear friend and colleague, the wonderful Dr. Sarah Reiff-Hekking, to join us. Dr. Sarah is the founder of True Focus Coaching, a speaker, a coach, but more than anything else, Dr. Sarah is the expert at helping people overcome procrastination and overwhelm. She always says that she's passionate about helping smart people that have a hard time managing their time and tasks figure out a way that works for them. It's been my pleasure to interview Dr. Sarah a few times, so I'm so excited to bring her live to our stage here at Brew Your Book, so you can really dig into this and be able to powerfully go forward with your writing, so you're not procrastinating or getting overwhelmed with everything that you're learning and you're going to go home and implement. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sarah.
Thanks so much, Kim. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to connect with you and your peeps in this way. Hi, everybody.
Yay! This was the easiest way that we could bring Dr. Sarah live and in person. So sit back and enjoy. Let's start off, Dr. Sarah, with just kind of setting the stage. How did you really get interested in helping people work through procrastination and overwhelm and manage their time in ways that really work for them?
Well, I come to all of this very honestly. So way back when I was in graduate school, I got stuck in my own procrastination and overwhelm and really had to figure out ways to manage myself so that I could get the things done that I wanted to get done in a way that worked for me. So for anybody out there that's, hidden in their bed or canceled a meeting or called in sick because something wasn't done and they were home furiously working on it, I completely understand what that feels like and how horrible it can be and how it really robs you of your own self-esteem, because you start to not believe that you can do these things that you know you can do, right? You start to not believe your own word because you're really pushing deadlines all the time and you're not following through on the things that you really want to do. So I came to it very honestly. When I was in graduate school, I went to graduate school as a clinical psychologist and a researcher. So I had to really learn how to put together long research projects that were going to happen over months and oftentimes years. And that really forced me to learn how to break down something that seemed really huge into smaller chunks and figure out how to do it in a way that worked better for me. So with that planning practice, right, I was then able to figure out how to break down smaller projects that I had into bite-sized pieces so that I could accomplish them in a way that worked for me, that I didn't feel like I was overwhelmed, that I didn't feel like I hadn't set up enough time and space for myself. So I really come to it through my own trial and error. And then as a clinical psychologist and subsequently as a coach for the last 12 years, I have spent lots of time working with smart people that are time challenged, that really want to get their writing into the world. They want to get their work into the world. I work with writers all the time, and I've really fine-tuned specific steps that will help people bust through procrastination and overwhelm. And some of them I've come to, as I said, from my own experience. Some of them are grounded in best practices that we know to really help people through the scientific literature. But I love helping people just free themselves of that weight and that feeling in the pit of their stomach of feeling overwhelmed and procrastinating.
And I just love these stories that you're sharing, because you're right. It's not like you can do your whole book or your whole research project the night before it's due. And how many of us, be really honest with yourselves now, how many of us have attempted to do things like that in our writing, in our business, in our jobs, where it's kind of like the, oh, look, it's April 14th, I had better do my taxes type of thing. And there are certain areas in your life where you can kind of like skate by that way. writing your book really isn't one of them. So before we get into your really great system, Dr. Sarah, I want to know, why are procrastination and overwhelm such big issues for people? Is there something wrong with us?
No, there's nothing wrong with you. What happens when people struggle with procrastination and overwhelm is that they really start to not trust themselves. And it makes it then hard for them to start to believe that they can move forward and reach their goals. It makes them start to doubt whether, and let's take the circumstance of writing a book. You know, if you can't sit down and write a page here and there, you can't trust that you're actually going to do it when you say you're going to do it. You can't trust yourself that you're going to actually complete a book. And it feels horrible to not be able to trust yourself. And it feels horrible when you end up wasting your time doing things that aren't meaningful to you. Or you sit down to write your book and, 5 hours later, you're on Google Maps looking at the neighborhood that you grew up in. Right? Whatever your particular version of procrastination is, we all have something like that. And it really costs us our self-esteem and makes us feel like we're wasting our life.
Absolutely. And isn't that the truth? You sit down and you're like, I have all afternoon to get this thing done. And the afternoon goes by in this flash, and it's evening and you're making dinner, and you suddenly look back at your afternoon and go, wait, I didn't get that done. And it can be really frustrating. And I love what you're bringing up, saying it's a matter of being able to trust yourself to consistently do what you say you're going to do. So with looking at time management, what are some of the problems that you see with how we are not dealing with that or handling time management properly?
Yeah, I typically see 4 types of problems with time management. The first one is that some of us really don't feel like we have control over our time. And sometimes that means that, there's too much going on and we really feel like we can't say no to people. Sometimes it's because how our brains process time is in a way that we're not noticing that the minutes are clicking by, right? So some of us notice time is right now or sometime in the future. There's really not minutes that we perceive as passing. So one of the big issues is just noticing this time is passing, and also feeling as though you have control over time passing. I also see a whole bunch of people that just really have never learned the mechanics of planning and using a calendar and a to-do list. And this doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It probably just means you are never taught to do it in a way that worked for you and your brain. And I know as a psychologist and as a coach that people's brains, even though we're all human and we're born with the same basic brain structures, some of us have strengths or weaknesses in the areas of planning and mapping things out over time. So it might be that you're born with kind of a weakness there, or that you just were never taught how to do the planning and the mechanics of managing your time in a way that works for you. Does that make sense, Kim?
That does make so much sense. And before I found you, my dad is really big on time management. In so much that growing up, he was always trying this system and trying that system and applying it both to his business and to kind of our family structure. So pretty much you name a time management system and I have tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I found something that really worked for me that I was able to be successful, get things accomplished, make that to-do list, and have a realistic picture of if things were gonna happen. And I love what you're saying here, that it's just our brains might be wired differently. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have to find the system that can work for you.
Right. And you need to practice it over time with support.
Yes.
Really, really important that you allow yourself to learn it. Because if you already knew how to do it, you'd be doing it. Right?
Right.
Right. So there's two other areas that I see related to time management that I just want to sneak in here. And one you just alluded to, it's the goal setting and priorities. So sometimes what happens is we have these big goals, right? You want to write the book, you want to get your work into the world. And then we have our to-do list and we have our calendar. And what we notice is that there's really not a big connection. There's no connection at all for some of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was actually at a really high level training, business training, a couple of years ago, and the presenter was presenting exactly on this topic. And she said, okay, write down your priorities and your goals from the weekend, and now make your to-do list. And then she said, look at both of them. And half the audience just busted out in giggles, because what they realized was what they put on their to-do list for the week had nothing to do with their long-term goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we see this happening with writers all the time. I'm sure you see it with your clients all the time, Kim. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's, the goal is to write the book, but there's no time in the calendar to do the writing, or there's no specificity about, I'm going to write about X at this time today. So those are really important clues that I help people with. And then the last piece is really what we're going to talk about a little bit more today. And I know you're going to work with people on when this interview is over. We're going to talk about procrastination and overwhelm, right? What do you do when you find that you're procrastinating and you've been on Facebook for 5 hours instead of writing your book proposal or the first paragraph of chapter 1. Right?
Yeah. And overwhelm is a real thing.
Yes.
So
yes.
Don't make some type of assumption that some people have an overwhelm switch and some people don't have an overwhelm switch. It's a real thing, and I think it's part of life. You can't eradicate overwhelm, but what you can do is, especially using Dr. Sarah's tools, is have a plan to be able to get through those times in life where life is coming at you faster than what you feel you can handle. To me, that's the definition of overwhelm, when it's everything's piling in on it at once. And I feel like I'm about this big. And I'm getting buried with it all. And that's what overwhelm feels like. But you can move through it. You don't have to live in that or just give up. Right.
And you can set up systems to keep it at bay. And overwhelm and procrastination, freezing, or avoidance, whatever your emotional piece to time management is really important to identify and notice. It's an emotional piece of time management. And this is where most people have a problem when they start to talk about time management, because they all go to calendar and to-do list, and they forget that your emotions also affect your ability to be focused, your ability to be productive. So we need to set up some systems to keep those emotions at bay so that you can focus and you're out of that fight or flight response, right? That panic feeling that shows up with overwhelm, with procrastination, with freezing, with avoidance.
Okay, so let's talk about what we can do, because you've got steps. So let's talk about that right now.
Okay, so I love to share my 5 steps to bust through procrastination and overwhelm. And Kim, you know this, but I'm going to set the stage for your audience that I love to talk about overwhelm, or whatever that time, that emotional piece for time management is for you. I love to talk about it as though it's a dragon. And it's not like the little dragon that sits on your shoulder. It's the huge 5-story tall dragon that breathes fire and has a tail as big as a house. Okay? Because that is really how destructive procrastination and overwhelm can be for people. So the first thing I like to say is recognize what's overwhelming you, or find that beast. If there was a dragon that lived outside your village and he could do substantial damage, you'd figure out where he lives, right? Yeah, nod your head. Yes.
Yeah.
You would figure out where he lives because otherwise you'd be in danger. Same thing here. Recognize what's overwhelming you, what specifically is starting that emotional feeling for you, whether it's overwhelm, freezing, avoidance, or you're doing something altogether different than what you intend to do, and that's called procrastination, right? Okay.
Just a little bit.
So figure out where it starts. So, for example, for lots of people that I work with that are writers, it starts with, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to write about, or I'm not going to be good enough, or it has to be perfect, otherwise it can't come out of my head, right? So it's a thought oftentimes that is overwhelming us. Does that ring true for you, Kim?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we call these around here a mental monster, those thoughts
Yes.
that are triggering it all. And we're specifically going to cover how to identify and deal with those mental monsters. But I love that you're bringing it in with part of this dragon, because remember that while this weekend we're all talking about books, what you're learning right now from Dr. Sarah is your go forward plan for anything else that you're doing in your life or your business.
Yes, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed or frozen, or you notice that you're procrastinating, I want you to figure out what's overwhelming you emotionally. So it might be that thought of, oh my God, I have to get this done. This book is like overdue, or this article is overdue. And that might be enough to put you into overwhelm. So I want you to identify it's that thought, right? And once you figure out what's overwhelming you, I want you to calm that inner fear discussion, right? Because these thoughts are never like, sweet, fun ones, right? They're always catastrophic and feeling destructive and very dangerous, right? So that's why I call them the fear discussion, and you call them mental monsters, right?
Right.
So you want to understand what that fear discussion is. And often it's, I can't, I'm not good enough. I screwed this up last time. Who am I to think that I can do this, right? All of these really negative things that we would never say to somebody else because they're kind of mean. And when we write down what they are, often they're really mean. So I want you to notice that and figure out how to calm that inner fear discussion with a positive conversation, a positive statement to yourself that's consistent with productivity. So for example, if your thought is, who am I to think that I can write this book? There's so many books out there already, like I don't even need to do it. Why am I bothering? Then I want you to say to yourself something like, I can write 1 or 2 sentences right now. I can spend 5 minutes doing this. Or it might be something like, you know what? My way of talking about this needs to get into the world. I am somebody who can make a contribution. And in order to do that, I need to start by writing a sentence or 2, right? Mm-hmm. So you hear how that feels much different than, holy crap, I'm horrible and I can't get this done.
Yeah.
Okay. So you really want to get a sense about what that internal fear discussion is and tame that dragon. Create a conversation with yourself that's consistent with productivity. And then the next step is enabling your routine and your environment to support productivity. And this is what I like to call engineering your containment system. So, Kim, I don't know if you saw the movie Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah,
Jurassic World. Okay, or there's a lot of writers in the room. You guys may have read those books, right? And if you remember in the movies, all the craziness happens when the dinosaurs, which are real life dragons in the movie, right? They're huge beings. They break out of the zoo and they break out of their containment systems, their cages, right? So what I need you to think about is setting up your routine and your environment to support productivity, that those are really your containment systems to keep the procrastination dragons and monsters at bay. And here's how those things work. You need to set up a routine to support your day and your week so that you know when you're going to do your writing and when you're not going to do your writing. Right? So being clear about that one piece of clarity is going to really fuel your writing. Because lots of times we're kind of sort of writing or kind of sort of working. Or our digital devices make it really easy for us to feel like we're doing one thing, but we're really paying attention to something else. So I want you to get really clear about when you're working and when you're not working, and put together what I call a flexible template for your week. Okay? And that starts with when you're working and when you're not working. That is your routine that you can start to lean into and feel comfortable with, so that you don't feel like you should be working or writing all the time, because that doesn't work for anybody.
Exactly. So one of the things that I've seen a lot when I talk with people is that they think that writing their book has to overwhelm their entire life. Mm-hmm. Like they have to write for hours and hours and hours every day. And when they're looking at their hard landscape of their time, they have this unrealistic expectation that A, that writing their book will last forever, and B, that it has to be so much time. Mm-hmm. You know, like you kind of equate it to exercise. You tell somebody that they have to exercise for 2 hours a day, that's unlikely to happen. You know, unless you're an A-level athlete or you're really training for something, that is an unsustainable amount of containment system, right? So we're looking to create a containment system that does work for you. So no one aspect of your life is taking over.
Exactly. And I have a great example. A few years ago, one of my friends and I decided that we both needed to be writing more on our own stuff. And so we set up a weekly meeting. And every Thursday morning, we would meet at Starbucks at 9 o'clock. Between 9 and 9:15, we'd check in and get our coffee and just say hello and get caught up on our week. And then from 9:15 till about 10 or 10:15, we would sit down side by side with our computers and write. And we would start that time by saying, okay, it's time to start. What are you going to write on? And we would tell each other exactly what we were going to write on, very specifically what the topic was. And then we would be quiet and we would write for 45 minutes to an hour. And then we would check in for 15 more minutes, pack up and leave. And we'd be out of there by 10:30. By doing that 45 minutes a week, 45 minutes to an hour, I was able to put together materials that allow me to run the programs that I now teach all the time, right? And it was really just 45 minutes a week. And what that time did was it primed me to be thinking about the things I wanted to be writing about. It primed me just to sit down. Now when I go into that Starbucks, guess what? I feel like writing because I've set up that routine and environment for myself. So that's the power of how you can set up your routine and your environment to support productivity. So we had a routine, Jay and I, about writing every Thursday morning. We set it up in a specific environment. It was Starbucks. It was a locked-in accountability situation where we are both there looking each other in the eyeballs saying, we're going to write right now because that's what we needed. And the physical environment was set up so that we wouldn't get other distractions. So really harness the strength and the power of your routines and your environment to help you be productive on those things that you want to most get done. And this is really where you need to get that your mindset piece is only one piece of the puzzle, right? That positive discussion that's consistent with productivity. It's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is setting up an environment that supports you doing your writing when you want to be doing your writing. And your environment predicts about 80% of your behavior. So take it seriously. Set it up. Get the support you need and let your environment do some of that heavy lifting of getting you started. Does that make sense, Kim?
No, and that does make perfect sense. And I love that you really focus on the environment. One of the things that you have to remember is you can control your environment.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. I would never be able to handle writing at a Starbucks.
Yes.
Because for me, I would be like, oh, I need more coffee. Yeah, no, none of this would be good for me. I'm coming to you this evening right now in my office. Guess where I do 100% of my work from?
Your office.
Right here.
Yeah.
And what that means is that I don't transfer work to the living room and expect to be productive. Or curl up in bed and expect to be productive. One of the big things on my personal environment is I write from a desktop computer. Mm-hmm. The tower's sitting right here. This is my main monitor, my secondary monitor. My chair is up way higher than I normally work, so I'm at a better angle for the camera. But I have my ergonomic keyboard, my fancy mouse with the little cushion. This is my optimum environment. Can I write from someplace else? Of course I can. I can. But I have crafted this space to give me that maximum support.
Yes. And I love that. And I love that you pointed out that not everybody can write from Starbucks, right? So some of us do well. I happen to be the person who wrote my dissertation in graduate school, right? That's the book you write to get your PhD by taking a chapter at a time and sitting in a coffee shop and writing. And because I do well with a little bit of background stimulation, but sometimes I can't do that, right? So this is where you want to get a sense if you're somebody who can write well with music in the background, or you need a certain temperature, or you need natural light, right? This is how you want to set up your environment for success so that you know when you get into that place, you're going to automatically be in a more optimal place to do your writing. Really important. And I often, just like you, will shut everything out. I remember a couple of years ago, I was at a business trip and I ended up getting stuck in town for a couple extra days. So I stayed at a friend's house, and she said to me, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, I have work to do all day, so I just really need a room with a door that I can close and I'm good to go." And, we had breakfast together, and then I said, bye. I went in the door, I closed the room, I did my appointment. I went in the room, I closed the door, I did my appointments. I came out at lunchtime and she's like, "Is that what you do?" And I was like, yeah, that's how I set myself up for productivity, right? So now that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. And you have to get a sense about what are those optimal writing chunks for you. I have a client who she knows it's 45 minutes. That's her optimal writing chunk. And she will schedule her week so she gets in 6 writing chunks. And so she knows she needs a 45-minute chunk somewhere, and then 15 minutes afterwards to go wiggle around, dance, talk to somebody, get a cup of coffee, do whatever. Okay. So get a sense about what your optimal chunk is and start to put that in your week, in your flexible template for when you're going to be getting your writing done. Make sense?
And part of that, don't forget, part of that is figuring out what works for you.
Absolutely.
And also sometimes realizing that when you take, well, this works for me, but I'm feeling stagnant. And when you flip it on its head and you totally go to your most inopportune writing place, sometimes when you do that once in a while, it can fuel your creativity.
Yeah. So what you want to do is get a sense about what works most of the time. And then when you start to feel kind of squirrely or bored, then give yourself the opportunity to shift it around and see what works. And also know that you can always come back to the office that always works for you, or the Starbucks that always works for you, or the mountainside, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So you don't throw out that place that always works, but there are times when I do this too. I just take my stuff and I go out to a different location because I'm tired of being in the office and I need some more stimulation. Yeah. So you really want to get a sense about that. And I want to make sure that we hit the last couple of steps here.
Yes,
because
please.
I know that you're going to want to have some more conversation with people when we're done here. So the other two pieces, the other two steps have to do with getting support. And the notion here is that success on any level never happens in a vacuum. All right. And I can't emphasize this enough. No matter who your favorite writer is and how they did their writing, or whoever your idol is, that successful person that you really, really admire is, if you peel back the curtain, you will see that there are people supporting that really successful person, even if it doesn't look like it on the surface. Okay. So this is where you really want to lean in and get support. It's why you're here listening to Kim, because she has a roadmap here that will help you get your book written. So make sure that you're getting support. And the notion here is, would you defeat a dragon on your own? And my answer to you is only in fairy tales. All right. Now, there's a lot of people that will say, yes, Sarah, because I have magic wand, right? Or I have my magic spear, or whatever it is. Well, I can tell you that stuff happens in fairy tales, not in real life. In real life, if there was a dragon that lived outside your village, you would have, your army of villagers helping patrol the perimeters and making sure you're keeping the dragon at bay, right? So you need to have the right support to help you keep going and accomplish the project that's most important to you. And then on that same vein, the fifth step is really to keep restarting until you are where you want to be, which is finished. So finishing a project looks like keep taking small steps, restart, 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 and then eventually you're finished. And that's just like when my friend Jay and I would meet an hour a week. I restarted an hour a week for a long time. And guess what? Now I have a great curriculum that I teach all the time. Make sense?
Absolutely. It's kind of like anything that isn't a once and done.
Mm-hmm.
You have to keep working at it. Exercising. You don't go to the gym once and you have the body that you want. I equate a lot of stuff to housework. It's not like you do the laundry once and you never have to do it again. That reset is really important. And I don't want you to think that most things in life are just really not a once and done. So when you make your peace with this idea that it's that do it, reset, do it again, do it, reset, that's the way life works. And when you make your peace with that, it allows you to go forward powerfully, because it cuts off any type of feeling like a failure at the knees. You realize that it's a consistent series of do-overs. And now that you have these tools, when you're doing it over, you're moving much farther down that path easier because you're already set up for success.
Right. And I love the wording restart, because that's what we have to do all the time. Any project, in order to complete it, you have to keep restarting it. Mm-hmm. Right? So get good at restarting, and that will mean you're good at finishing.
Absolutely. So, want to talk to us really briefly about your productivity program?
Sure. So I have a awesome 4-week Jumpstart Your Productivity program that allows you to immediately figure out where you're wasting time and make changes to get more done. Helps you create those daily and weekly routines that I was just talking about, and allows you to know that the most important things are going to be handled effectively, right? So you can just relax and know they're getting done. It also teaches you a consistent weekly planning process that will work for you. And it will help you plan for success and keep your productivity going strong after the program ends.
And this is really important to kind of bridge that gap between knowing how you're doing your writing and actually being able to fit it into your life and get it done. It's the difference between the theory that, you know, we come to these seminars, we learn theory. It's that ability to go out and put it into practice and continue practicing it and doing that implementation and the writing so that you can move forward in your projects, the book, any other projects that you have. And this is part of the Write 90 Squared. This is our gift to you, bonusing this in to help you after we get started and really get that good foundation, that you'll have these tools to be able to move forward, continue to write your book and any other book or project that you're working on as well.
Yeah, and what I love about this program is that you get training calls once a week for 4 weeks. You get a live Q&A call with me. So if you're having a stuck point, right, you can say, Sarah, what do I do with this? And you also get to hear from other people on the calls about what's working for them and what's not working for them. There's just a lot of gold in this particular program that's going to allow you to keep that consistency going and have some compassion for yourself as you're learning the process that works for you, which I think is one of the biggest pieces that we all can learn in this process of practice and keep going, keep writing. Practice, keep going, keep writing. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sarah. It's always my pleasure to bring your wisdom to my people. And I especially know from experience that it's the 2 P's that people get hung up on. Publishing, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, and procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be talking about that, about procrastination more this evening, but I really wanted to bring in the expert, you, to talk about procrastination and overwhelm. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I really, really appreciate this.
You are welcome. Have a great evening, everybody, and good luck with writing your books, and pay attention to what Kim has to say. She's got gold here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.